afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to your virus update. You guys know that I've been ahead of this virus. I was reporting this back when it was still rather small, and a lot of these other guys on YouTube that jumped on the bandwagon and they're trying to report on this virus. But I'm ahead of the curve a little bit, and I found out something today that I want to show you guys. Now, it's not verified information because I'm ahead of the curve, That's why later this information could possibly, I'm going to say more than likely, be verified, later. But, I'm always ahead of the curve. And I found out something new, and I'm going to show you guys what it is, very specifically. And it might be good news, actually. But on the other side of the coin, it's going to be bad news. Okay, so I got good news, and if this is fair, if what I see is verified as true, it could be good news. Okay, but let's get at it and let's find out what it is. And it's going to take me a minute to show you guys, but you guys will catch on after a minute, after I show you, and I'm going to tell you what I think has happened with this virus. But now that I'm putting it on the air, other people will see it, and then others out there will start to probably maybe verify whether this is true or not. So let's get started. Let's open up the charts right here and take a look, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, here's what I think happened. In Wuhan, the city of origin, I think this virus is first off, I think this virus is airborne, and I think it's extremely contagious. And it moves ahead of itself. In other words, what it does is it infects other people who don't know that they're infected, and they go around and they're spreading it without knowing that they're infected. And so the caseload is actually much wider than what you actually see. The people that you see that have, for each person you see that has pneumonia, there's probably dozens of people out there who have no symptoms or who are asymptomatic. Now, with that little piece of knowledge, I think I can explain to you what's happened. And I think what happened was, in the Wuhan, the city where it broke out, has 11 million people. And I think that this virus was spreading amongst those 11 million people quite contagiously, And I think what happened is, I think it spread to quite a wide base. A wide base that could have been 10,000 or 20,000 or maybe even 30,000 people. And then out of those people, you had cases of people who are coming down with the pneumonia. I think what happened was these people that were coming down with the pneumonia realized how sick they were, and those were the people that flooded into the emergency centers and into the hospitals and crowded the hospitals. And I think this number we're seeing reflects those people, not so much all the people that have it, but more the people who have it severely. In other words, this number, 6,195, of which an awful lot of them come out of Wuhan, I think that number reflects more the people who have it severely. And I think a lot of people are having it and just thinking they have the flu or thinking they have a cold, and a lot of people are just staying home. And those numbers are not being recorded. Now, how wide are those numbers out there who are not being recorded, who have the virus, but the virus is not going full blast on them into pneumonia or symptoms where they have to rush into the hospital? And out of those people who have rushed into the hospital and stuff, it takes time for them to actually verify those cases and confirm that those cases are actually coronavirus. So out of these numbers, those would be the worst people. Those would be the people who are the sickest. That caseload of the thousands of people that they're verifying would be the sickest people. Those are the people that would receive treatment first because they are in critical condition. And out of those, we see 133 deaths out of 6,165 people. Okay? So that's quite a high mortality rate. That puts the mortality rate up over 2%. Okay? But now what about all those other people who might have it and who are not being confirmed as having it? Okay? Now, I think that that reflects more in the West here, because in the West here, a lot of people get tested even if they have a sniffle. Okay? So if we move into other countries besides China, or even into places where their emergency rooms aren't swamped with people coughing and sneezing, maybe other cities in China, like one here, I'll show you, let me take a look at the numbers. If we go here to like Guangdong, right? They have 277 confirmed cases, but no deaths. Okay? If we go here to Zhuang, Zhejiang, Zhuang, or however they pronounce it, they've got 296 cases, but no deaths again. Okay? If we go here to Hunan in China, 221 cases. Well, those hospitals in these other places probably aren't swamped with people that have congested lungs and pneumonia and everything else. And they can possibly do the test quicker and easier because they don't have so much of a caseload. You see? And so their cases that are coming into them are possibly not so sick, and people, it's more reflecting the true number of how many is in those particular cities that actually have it. And we're seeing no deaths, 277 here, no deaths, 221, no deaths, 296, no deaths. Now, in Henan, we got 2 deaths out of 206. In Anhui, we got confirmed 152, no deaths. In Chongqing, we've got 147, no deaths. You're starting to see a pattern here. In Shandong, we got 130, no deaths. In Beijing, we got 111, 1 death. Okay? In Zhuang, in the mainland, we got 109, no deaths. So in these cities, we've got a lot of people who have it, but no deaths, or very little deaths, 1 or 2, And in the cases that have went across and overseas and went into the West, I don't think we have any deaths yet. So what's being reflected here, I think, is the actual mortality number of this. I think that in Hubei, in mainland China, where the city is it originated, we've got 3,554 cases and 125 deaths. So there, all of a sudden now, that city, if we focus in on this so you guys can see it, in this city right here, most of the deaths have occurred, out of the confirmed 3,500 cases that they've had. They've got 125 deaths, which is quite a high mortality rate. I think the reason for that is very specific. I think it's spread through the general population of that city, and I think a lot of people have got it. And I think that most of the people that have come in and swamped the hospitals are only the sickest. So I think what we're doing is we're looking at a group amongst a group that's the sickest of the general population that's came in. So we're looking at something that's spread wide through the city. And most of the people that have been confirmed that have it are the sickest ones, the people who developed the pneumonia. And so I think that as this moves through the general population, only 1 out of a certain number of people develop the pneumonia. And out of those people that develop the pneumonia, only a certain number of them actually die and have a mortality rate. So I think what's happening here is we're actually getting as it's moving into these other cities, it's not so widespread. The people are onto it, basically, and they go in and get checked. Like if we move down here to this next city, Zhejiang, we got 296 confirmed cases and no deaths. I think this is reflecting more of the true number of this virus rather than a skewed number. I think that the numbers that were coming out from the original city of Wuhan, the numbers are kind of skewed, and the reason why is mostly what they're counting from is the people who develop pneumonia or serious symptoms. I think most people come down with this, and a lot of people only have a cold. It's just a cold. Or maybe a bad cold with a little fever, and then they get better. I think that what we're seeing a reflection of here is more taking in all the people in the city, or a lot of the people, maybe 40 or 50,000 people have it. Out of those 40 or 50,000 people, we're looking at confirmed cases of 3,554, and out of those, 125 people have died. Now, I'm not negating how bad this virus is. I know this is a terribly bad virus. But if I'm right about this, and if this information is verified, what I'm talking about here, the death mortality rate of it might not be even 1%. It might be more like a half of a percent, or maybe just 1% mortality, instead of, like, we've heard these early reports coming out where people say, oh, the mortality rate is 15%. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, Yeah, well, it would be 15%. I mean, because you have to understand this thing is so catchy that it's probably, if they do stop it, it's going to be, give them all a hand, because if they're able to stop this thing at this point, because this thing is so, it's got so much defenses against being stopped. In other words, people can be asymptomatic, they can be going around spreading it and not even know they're spreading it. If they can stop something like that, my hands are off to them. I give them an applause, a huge applause. And so, because this thing is probably going to continue to expand exponentially, that really matters then. What is the mortality rate? Because if the mortality rate is more than, say, 4 or 5 or 6%, then it'll shut down the system. See? But now, I'm thinking, myself, that the mortality rate is probably not as high as they think it is. Even though we've seen 125 deaths in Wuhan, with 3,554 cases, how many cases are in Wuhan that haven't been recorded? And those people are not dead, and a lot of them are probably starting to get over this now. They've probably had the flu. It's like the flu, they've had the corona, and now they're starting to finish up. It's starting to come out of their lungs, and they're starting to feel better, and their fever's going down and all that. How many of those people are there out there? Are there 40,000 of them? And what are we looking at here? The 3,500 might be just reflecting the worst caseload, the worst people, the people who have it the worst. And so if we just take that number, 3,500, and we divide it by 125 deaths, we get quite a high mortality rate. But if we figure that maybe there's 40,000 other people out there that the virus has went through, and this number that's being reflected is not the actual mortality rate. In other words, what I'm saying is as this virus starts to progress out in the wider, we're going to start to see have a better idea of the actual mortality rate of it as it starts to spread out wider. Now, there's something else to consider. If it does swamp the system, it could cause the mortality rate to go up a bit higher. In other words, as it moves into a country, if it swamps the medical system, there's going to be a lot of people who might not receive adequate care. That'll increase the mortality rate. So then we have to take a look and start to say, well, what is the amount of people that catch it and get the pneumonia and it becomes serious and they need hospital care? Well, that percentage might be quite high. And it very possibly is quite high, because I reversed these numbers around the other way. Like, I switched them around backwards, and I added up these cities where they have had no deaths or very little deaths, which I think gives a better reflection of the actual true mortality rate. And, still, and how many people have needed hospital care in those particular cities. And it looks like a virus that, if it does spread to other countries, It looks like a virus, and if it spreads further in China, it looks to me like a virus that is going to basically overload the medical establishment that's already in place, overload the hospitals. And this is probably the reason why they're rushing to build new hospitals in Wuhan. Okay? So if it overloads the hospital system, and this is what this looks like it'll do, and it'll also cause an awful lot of pneumonia, an awful lot of a terrible, even the people that don't die from it, because they've had no exposure. This is a novel coronavirus, meaning a new coronavirus that we've all had our immune systems have had no antibodies against it. See, every year when we get the flu or a cold, oftentimes we've already had a flu or a cold that's like it before, and our body recognizes it. Our body does not recognize this. Okay? And so, as it moves through the system, it could possibly cause an awful lot of people who are basically have pneumonia. And even if they get hospital care or they don't get care, maybe they'll get better on their own with pneumonia, but still, they're out of commission for maybe weeks or maybe even months. They're out of commission. They can't work. They can't do anything. They can't. And so what it'll be is if we see this spread around the world, and if you want my opinion on it, okay, I'm entitled to my opinion. My opinion is I don't think they're going to be able to stop this thing. That's what I think. That's my opinion. I'm entitled to my opinion. I don't think they're going to be able to stop this thing. And so I'm thinking ahead, and I'm thinking, what'll we see? Well, we'll see an awful lot of people who are going to get better, but they'll have pneumonia. And if they swamp the hospital system, I mean, at a certain point, the hospital just says, well, yes, you have pneumonia, and we're going to give you some of these antibiotics or whatever to stop any secondary infections, but you'll have to go home because we got no beds left. All around the world be like that. So you have people at home with pneumonia trying to get better, and they're incapacitated. So you'll go to buy a hamburger at a store someplace or something, and they'll say, sorry, we're closed today. And say, well, why are you closed? Well, 3 of our workers are out sick with pneumonia. And it'll be the same thing over and over again everywhere you go. It'll basically just shut the whole economy down. Because this flu, the way I see it, this coronavirus is an incapacitator more so than it is a killer. That's what I think we got here. I think we got something that is an incapacitator. Wherever it moves through an economy or a country, it's going to basically shut everything down. And it's going to last for months. Because as it moves through, you're going to get an initial wave, you're going to get a first wave of people that's coming down with it, and then you have your second wave of people that didn't catch it in the first wave, and this takes months. 4, 5, 6, 7 months for it to work its way through the population before it's gone. It disappears the way it come. Like it's almost like the Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch of the West. She comes, she only stays for a couple minutes, and then she vanishes again on her broomstick. Well, that's what this thing's like. That's what I think's going to happen. I think this thing come out of nowhere. It's come really fast. It's moving really fast. And I think it's going to spread everywhere. And I think it's disappear. But only after everyone's caught it and had it. And then it's going to disappear. It's like the old Wicked Witch. It's going to fly off her broomstick when she's done doing her dirty work. And that's what this thing's like, So, that's what I think we're dealing with there. Now, that's my opinion on it. I'm not trying to panic anybody or anything like that, but I just looking at the facts. I'm a realist. And I don't hide my head in the sand. And the reason why I don't think they're going to be able to stop this thing is because the carriers, a lot of them don't have any symptoms. They're not coughing, they're not sneezing or anything else. And I think it's very virulent, very, very extremely contagious. I think it's airborne. I think this is probably in my mind, now this is just my opinion, nobody else's. I think this is one of the most contagious things that we've seen in a long time. I think this is the sort of thing where if somebody has been in a room, breathing the air and stuff, and been around in a room, and they could even be gone, and you walk in there and in that same room that they've been in, and you might even be able to catch it. It's that bad, I think. And I think it's extremely contagious. And I think that's why we see it spreading so fast. I don't think they're going to be able to contain this thing. So we got to analyze what is this thing actually going to do. That's my opinion. I don't think they're going to be able to contain it. But I think the death rate is much lower than, I think we're going to find out what the death rate is. In other words, the mortality rate. And I think it's going to be lower than we think it is. But I think that we're going to have quite a high count of people who actually come down with the pneumonia part of it, and I think that's going to incapacitate the economy in almost every country on earth. And I think it's going to be so bad, it's going to hurt the economy so bad that could cause repercussions more so than the virus. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe, and give me a thumbs up, and we'll catch you guys in the very next show. Bye-bye.